Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a minute or two to just make sure everyone can log in and can hear and see our presentation this evening. We're so excited that you are here. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and where you're listening in from. As you get settled, use the chat to interact amongst yourselves. But if you have any questions for tonight's special guests, you can put those into the Q&A box as we go along this evening. We'll just wait one more minute to let everyone get settled. All right. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Good evening and welcome to the Milwaukee Public Library Book Chat. Each month we focus on a different theme and occasionally bring in guests from the public. My name is Beth and I'm dialing in from the Milwaukee Public Library East Branch this evening. And with me tonight is my co-host, my esteemed colleague Greg, who was recently interim manager at Center, but you're now back at Central Library. Isn't that right, Greg? All right. Feel free to use the chat box to interact with each other, but do use that Q&A box for any questions for our guests tonight. We'll have time for questions later today. And anyways, we always invite everyone to sit back and relax and enjoy the interview and the recommendations. We will email you in a couple of days with all the books and items we have talked about, so you don't need to feel like you need to take any notes. All right. And then without further ado, I want to introduce our special guest. So with us this evening is Mikey Cody Apollo, a Black queer writer, filmmaker, educator, and feminist killjoy from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Most of their work explores themes such as race, gender, sex, and religion. Mikey is the author of a self-published collection of poetry titled Black Girls, Silence, and Other Things Made of Gold. Mikey currently works for UBUNTU Research and Evaluation, a team of unapologetic Black women, femmes, and non-binary folk committed to disrupting systemic oppression through strategic evaluation, facilitation, and education. We're so excited to have you here with us tonight, Mikey. And then I just want to remind everyone, you will all be entered into winning some passes for a screening of the film Moonlight at the Oriental Theater. We will be pulling names for that later tonight. So yay. And Mikey was telling me that's one of their favorite movies, so I'm really excited. So welcome. Thanks so much for being here. How are you this evening?
I'm doing really good. I heard it's like super hot outside. Haven't quite experienced the heat yet, so I'm just chilling in my kitchen at the moment, but very excited to be here and talk about books.
Very cool. Yeah, I went outside just for 10 minutes and that was enough for me. So I don't blame you. I hope everyone else is staying cool at home tonight too.
The perfect night for a Zoom program because no one wants to be outside. Too hot.
Have a cold drink. Glass of water. So Mikey, you're from Milwaukee. Do you want to tell us and our listeners a little bit about your Milwaukee story? What keeps you here?
So Milwaukee born and raised, super proud to be from the 414. I think I have a very complicated relationship with Milwaukee. I remember like being in high school and being like, I'll go to college, not in Milwaukee, but ended up going to UWM for community engagement and education. And like, after being in school for, I think like 2 weeks, I was like, it doesn't make sense for me to go anywhere else. Like, it doesn't make sense for me to like leave my community or try to transfer out. I got to like see the city in a completely different way. And it was through like my educators, through working for sociocultural programming and doing different like Milwaukee tours to like the north side and the south side, and like really seeing like how beautiful and complex and just amazing our city is. And so still here at 26, I think this will always be my forever home, even if I were to travel or move away somewhere else briefly. But Milwaukee's where it's at. I think a lot of people give Milwaukee a bit of a hard time, but if you're in the city and if you're with the folks of the community, like, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that so much. What about Milwaukee inspires you beyond the just living here? Is it the people?
So I think it's a mix of the people. My village is fantastic. I can't think of a better group of people in the entire world. So that's like one huge part of it. But I think the other part of it is just like, there's so much history in the city. Like there's so many, like, I think of like, especially now that it's Pride Month too, like we have such a rich queer history here in Milwaukee, and like such rich like Black history and Latinx history. And there's just so much here. Like these buildings, these streets have seen and witnessed so much. And again, that's one of those things where I'm like, we should be talking about these things a lot more and highlighting these things a lot more. But yeah, so like, it's just a mix of like, not only like the people who are like fantastic and like the loves of my life, but also like this city is quite literally magic and full of so many different stories. So the culture, I guess, would be the runner-up.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a big reason why we wanted you to come on tonight to talk to everyone, because we want people to hear those stories and what inspires you as a writer. And you are a writer. Have you always been a writer? What kind of drew you to that artistic expression?
So when I was in first grade, my teacher read us Judy B Jones, and I became like obsessed with Judy B Jones. I owned all of the books. I was a stan for Barbara Park. Like I loved Judy B Jones. And so by the time I got to second grade, my teacher, Miss Snyder, like really like honed in on that and was like, I see that this is an interest of yours. So like every day after school, I would like come with like my pockets filled with quarters, and I would buy up quarter notebooks, and I would like write my own versions of Judy B Jones. And so that's like where it started. And then by the time I got to middle school, I was doing forensics, like the acting, reading, speaking competitions. And I'm very competitive. So I was in a category called impromptu speaking, and I was not doing well at it. So I was like, you know what, I'll just go to poetry. I'll just read some poetry. But of course, like, I was like, I think the best way for me to do this is if I'm reading something like I wrote, because like you can't fake teenage angst. So I wrote poems, and that really kicked off the love of writing poetry. And then I went to High School of the Arts, and that was like the top spoken word team through Dasha Kelly Stillwater's collective. And so that completely shifted my writing, not only because I was being like on this team and I was around all these amazing people and expressing myself in this art form that combined two of my favorite things. You have spoken, like you have poetry, and then also like the performance aspect of it. I'm dying at the Capricorn of it all. Comment in the chat. Yeah, very unapologetically a Capricorn. But yeah, so like it was through really being at High School of the Arts and Spiders, the team, and being a creative writing major there, and through the mentorship of like Dasha Kelly and all of these like educators and people who like saw that this was something that like made me feel like invincible. So yeah, that's how I got into writing. Mostly because I'm very competitive, and also just because I'm a nerd. So Judy B Jones was my girl.
I love, she's still
That's
ever
great.
popular here at our library system. So she has good company here with you. What about Junie specifically? What pulled you in right away about her?
One, I think because you get her like sassy internal monologue, and so it's always, I think one, because I was a kid too, right? So like the thing that Judy B Jones would be like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Like in my child brain, I was like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Which is interesting now that I'm thinking about it and thinking about like the theme of the books we're talking about tonight, where I'm just like, oh no, I just have always like vibed with like women who were like, something's amiss. I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm gonna make my own lane and that kind of thing. Also, Judy B Jones stockings were always fantastic. Like I'm thinking specifically of the pink and yellow polka dot joints. Like those are fantastic. Like she was stylish, she was funny, and like just very relatable.
Love that. Yeah,
she's still way popular. And like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, some girl came in and she's like, I want Judy B Jones. And I was like, which one? Do you know which one? She's like, no, just a stack of them. Okay. It's great because Judy B Jones has been popular long before we were reading, and will be popular long after we're done reading, I would imagine.
Yeah, the author just does such a good job of capturing childhood, I feel, without talking down to kids. And really, that's so important for kids to find their voice. And I think you absolutely did. So that's great. Did you ever write a fan letter to the author?
I think I did. And then when I was an adult and like published my book, I was like, maybe I should. And then I was like, oh, not Barbara Parks is deceased and passed on. So yeah, so try to honor her memory whenever I get a chance to talk about why I fell in love with reading and writing.
I love that. And I loved your story about the quarter notebooks that you would buy from your teacher. Do you have any of those left, or have they disappeared?
Those and even though I deeply regret, I remember finding my high school poetry book and being like, I have to throw this away. We have to burn these. Like, I don't want anyone looking at them. And I deeply regret it now. I'm like, I should have held on to those. But yeah, all of those they are very far
For better or worse. I feel that way sometimes I still have a bunch of old papers that I wrote in school, and it's like, do I keep these or do we recycle them? I don't know, but we'll see. All right. So you grew up here in Milwaukee. Do you have any Milwaukee Public Library memories that you'd like to share with anyone, or anything funny? Or
I feel like the one I'm thinking of right away was the downtown location. My senior year of high school, we would often skip, and so we would go to the library because that's what the cool kids were doing, right? You skipped, you got Jimmy John's, and you went to the library. And so I'm thinking of that. And there also was a time where I think it was a last minute change, but Dasha, we actually had a slam in like the corridor part, and like it's just wild to like see the pictures from that evening.
Yes.
And like there's literally a whole like library just behind this like big group of high schoolers there to like spit some poems. But yeah, so it's between that and then of course being like, all right, we got our Jimmy John's, let's go to the library.
That's a good place to skip.
Wholesomely naughty. I love it. I love that so much. So you mentioned Dasha Kelly Hamilton, who is our new Wisconsin poet laureate. She was actually on Book Chat, a year ago now. So you'll be co-partners on that with her. So yay, she's such a delight and so talented. And that's so cool that you've gotten, to work and learn from her. Do you have any other inspirations, people that are either local or just inspirational to you that you'd recommend to others to check out?
Oh gosh.
You could think about it.
Melissa Mersch Rodriguez comes to mind first. Melissa is a good friend of mine. She is the brilliant mind behind Moody the zine. Moody is a zine that's a collection of queer, Black, Indigenous, people of color's work. And so she takes, like, literally it was something that in the middle of the pandemic, she was like, you know what, we all feel distant from each other. Like we're not in these like artsy spaces together. I want to do something to kind of like replicate that. And it's like grown. Like I don't even think you can apply.
We just bought a bunch. No, the library just bought a bunch of subscriptions to it. I'll put the link in the chat.
Yes, please do.
Yes.
But yeah, Melissa is just fantastic. Not only because of like Moody, but as a fabric arts artist, as a curator, as another fantastic poet. Like I always try to like give Melissa her flowers when I can. Also, Kentrell Washington is a huge inspiration, like through Dr. Kelly Hamilton and being in Stillwater's collective. We went to Louder Than Bomb, which is like the movie about Chicago's poetry scene. And like me being 16, I was like, I'm gonna steal your book because I heard you got an autographed copy. And then like basically he took me under his wing as like his mentee. And so he was a huge inspiration behind like why I even published the book or how I even found my voice in Black feminism, which I love to share with people, being like, yeah, Black man is the one who taught me about Black feminism. So also Britt Nicole and Lilo Allen are two amazing people, two amazing artists. Britt has a book out and was nominated for Shepherd Express's Best Author last year. And then Lilo is in charge of Bronzeville Collective, which is a lovely collective, also full of Black, brown, and queer artists.
Awesome. I see lots of those names in our audience tonight. So hi, everyone. So glad you're here to support Mikey. We'd love you having you on the show too. Let's see. So yeah, well, for those of you who aren't the people named, we will send a follow-up email. We'll include links and all that good stuff to everyone mentioned. I always love getting new recommendations from people that I admire. So thank you for sharing. Let's see. So you published recently, or I'm not quite sure how long ago because time is ephemeral for me now, but your poetry book, and it's titled Black Girls, Silence, and Other Things Made of Gold. Can you share a little bit about how that came to be, by the title? Tell everyone a little bit more about it.
I feel like I'm sharing like all the not bad parts of myself, which is the part that's like very human. So I had been saying since like I graduated high school, I was like, I need to publish a book. Like this is something I need to do. And like had a version of the book, but it didn't feel right. Like I think I was trying to censor myself a lot. I was poems that I was like, they're kind of good. Like they could be in a collection. Like I just really was not vibing with the first go round of it. And so it just lived on my laptop for a couple of years. And then I had the pleasure of being Tobias Ray's student at UWM. Tobias Ray is another fantastic poet. Yeah, just incredible, amazing, like also a name that folks should check out. But I was his student during fall of 2016. So take with that information what you will, but I was his student during that time. And so it was just really important for him to like, I think for me to be a student during that time because of the fact that we both were queer folks trying to figure out like what life looks like. And he especially was like, you have important things to say and you're telling all these stories and like you're sharing all these experiences, like you really should put together a book. And so my final project for that class actually was the beginning of Black Girl Silence and Other Things Made of Gold. And the title was, if I wasn't skipping class, I was running late in college. And so I was literally feverishly printing out my stuff. The class started at like 9 a.m. It's like 9:10 and I'm like printing stuff for this binder. And one of the big like things was you need to have a title for your work. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, well, what am I writing about? What do I like? And I was like, all right, I am, and I like Black girls. Okay, well, that's part of the title. I like gold. All right, cool. Is there anything that connects them? And then I thought of like Silence is Gold. And I was like, perfect, there we go. Like, so basically it was in the middle of me scrambling and trying not to lose any points on this project that the title came about. But that was May of 2017. And so Black Girl Silence and Other Things Made of Gold was published July 2017. So July 15th of this year is the 5-year anniversary, which is wild to say out loud. Thank you.
That's awesome. I love that story so much. And I remember those days of student life where some of your best stuff comes from those moments of like, I have to get this done right now.
Stress is powerful. Stress can be very powerful.
So powerful. So I read a quote from you that really struck me, and it was about your poetry and the accessibility of the poetry. And I'm going to read the quote. And you said, I don't think it's necessary for someone to have to struggle to know the meaning of my poetry. However, I do hope that white folks and other non-Black folks take my work and use it as a way to unpack the relationship with anti-Blackness. Those are the only folks who should really be working through my poetry. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that for everyone?
So I think there's this implication that if you're a poet, like people have to like struggle with your work, or it's only really, really good poetry if it's like really like making people like stuck and they're like, what does this word mean and all this other stuff. And there was a couple of years ago, this huge thing, because I came from a slam poetry background. There was all these conversations about like, is slam or is traditional poetry elitist? Is slam poetry like, is it seen as like a not as good art form because it's predominantly Black, brown, and queer people? Like, it's just, there was a bunch of conversation happening around it. And so I found the question very interesting. I think the question posed for that interview was like, do people struggle with your work, or do you want people to struggle with your work? And it was like, oh, of course not. Mostly because I write about my experiences being Black, being queer, being a woman. And so for a lot of times, like, I'm hoping the folks who are, on the receiving end of the poetry, check one or if not all three of those boxes. And so I'm doing this writing for us, but then at the same time, like it's not like white people can't look at my book or hear me recite poetry. So I think for me, it really was a thing of like, if you can't relate, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have a part in this as well. I have been in a few different situations where I'm talking with folks about the book. Sorry, you can hear my co-host Ruby in the background.
I love it.
Where I've been talking with folks and they'll like get weird about like the poetry, and I'm just like, I understand race is like sticky and uncomfortable, but like also like that's the only way we're ever going to address any type of inequity. Like, we can't move towards liberation if we're not actively being like, this is bad, this is harmful, this is violence. So really, when non-Black people are reading my art, I hope that there is a consideration of like, have you perpetuated anti-Blackness or violence in this way? What can you do to really be a co-conspirator against racism? Not just simply, throwing up a Black square on Instagram or putting ally in your bio. Like, this is, all of our liberation is inextricably tied together. And so there's that part of it. And then at its core, it's also just like, people should just be reading more Black artists and queer artists, period. So yeah.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you. And something that, Greg and I work really hard to bring onto this program to make sure that our patrons are learning about these folks that you should be reading and not just the stuff that's on the New York Times bestsellers list. This is the stuff that's being produced in our community, people that go to our libraries and use our libraries to make their work. So I'm just so happy that we were able to have you on. Let's see.
I have so I think I was reading one of your blog posts maybe, and you were talking about where you're talking about your poetry and how people access it, about Milwaukee and how Milwaukee gets such a bad rap, and then like people leaving because it's so bad. And it really struck me like, have you tried to make it better? Right? It's like we have all these things in our head about, yeah, Milwaukee does have a lot of room for improvement. But if you're not a person who's willing to step in and make your community better, and become that ally, then of course Milwaukee's never going to get any better because you haven't tried. So I really enjoyed reading your blog post about, I think it was titled "They Leave But They Don't Come Back" or something like that. I really enjoyed that because it was so true. Very true.
Thank you. Yeah, and thanks to Imagine MKE. I think it was through their Imagine This blog that I wrote that one for. So yeah, thank you.
Yep. The amount of times I've heard, even people I know that have moved away and they still have big opinions, and it's like, well, you left, so have your opinion, but we're living here and trying to make it better every day. So
I also think there's a difference too between folks like, and I get it, right? Like careers, jobs, resources, money. Like there are very real reasons families like to move out of Wisconsin. But my issue really lies mostly with folks who leave and then don't pour back any seeds or anything back into the city and only continue to perpetuate like these like negative ideas and stigmas around it. Like that's where I am like, all right, let's calm down. Like folks can, we all should be able to travel and, move and do all that cool stuff, but also like it's super important to pour back. So yeah.
We have a environmental kind of justice and climate change book club through Milwaukee Public Library, and we've been talking a lot about how Milwaukee is becoming kind of a hub of climate change activism and a place, we might be a sanctuary city for people fleeing climate change, right? Like our area here is going to do better than a lot of places in the world as climate change occurs. And we're hoping to bring in some more thought about how do we keep Milwaukee accessible and safe for those who already live here, while also recognizing our place in this changing world that we live in. So it's things that I'm very interested in talking about more, and I'm hoping people realize that too. So all of this is tied together because we don't want to price out people that already live here in our city as we try to attract new people here as well. So perfect. Let's see. So you talked a lot about spoken word poetry. What really, is it the performance that drew you to that? Why that form of expression?
So I was a theater kid for a bit. Like I went to First Stage for a majority of my childhood. And like being an actress was like one of the first jobs I really wanted to do. And then I joke about this, but I'm being so serious when I say it. Then once I started doing poetry and doing performance poetry, I could not break out of that cadence. And it became like acting became like not an option anymore, because it was like everything. I could be reading ingredients to like my mom on a package and she would be like, why does it sound like you're reciting? Like, so yeah, so I think for me it was one, the mix of being able to like, you know, be able to talk and share and like have it like being a performer, like having a performer background, it was like, oh, that's cool. And then also like blends in writing, which was like my first love. So it was also like, if you've ever been in a poetry slam, like you can feel the electricity in the air, like especially youth poetry slams. Like we don't give young people enough credit, but like it's just, there's nothing like being at a youth poetry slam and seeing them cheer for each other and like support one another, and just it's just a really fantastic, beautiful art form. And like when I think of community, like slam poetry is one of the first things I think of, because you would have these like teams competing against each other, and still like someone gets up there and does a funny poem or does a poem about, you know, something traumatic that happened to them, and it would like some of the first people to get to them after they walk off the stage would be like other teams. Like, so it's just like all the things that I value in this world in one space. And it's just, there's nothing like it.
Have you been able to do any performing, or has it been kind of COVID weirdness, or how has the community kind of been keeping itself going through all these changes?
Sorry, my cat jumped up on the table.
That's okay.
You're asking me that. Sorry, give me one moment to grab her.
No problem. We like visitors. And then just a reminder for everyone, you can put your questions for our special guest Mikey into the Q&A. Hi. What's her name again?
Her name is Ruby.
Hi, Ruby. Thanks for coming to our program. I sometimes have a 5-year-old busting in like in the background. So he used to be super shy, and then now he thinks it's really funny when he Zoom bombs me in person. So
I love it. I'm sorry, could you please re-ask the question?
Yeah. What was the question now?
It was about like how has these like the spoken word performances, like how have they fared through COVID? Are they happening again now, or has it been hard?
A mix. So I'm very grateful. I've had a lot of opportunities to actually perform in person this year. One of the first stages I got to return back to was Lyrical Sanctuary, which is the longest running open mic in the city of Milwaukee. And also I got to work for it when I went to UWM. And so it was great to be back. What I enjoyed about it, but what also ended up being one of those things that's like hard when you're like, you know, reciting, is that like, if you were getting on the mic, you had to have your mask on, like keep it on. So it's interesting because then it's like when folks are coming and they know that they're trying to get on the open mic list, you have to be like, okay, which mask can I wear that's going to help me sound the best? And so it's just interesting seeing how like the culture of it has changed as like our world is constantly changing. I also had the honor of being on the Pride Fest stage with Lilo Allen, Melissa, Aaliyah McHatton, like a bunch of artists in the city that I love and admire. And that was beautiful, like to be back at Pride, like in person after not being there in like 2 to 3 years. But then to have like this incredible diverse lineup was also fantastic. So yeah, I think it's I think virtual performances are still kind of the wave. Like I think a lot of people are trying not to, you know, generate too many bodies in one space. But as our world continues to evolve at this stage in the pandemic, folks are doing what they can to be accessible. And I'm enjoying a lot of the ones that are hybrid of like live stream and in person, so that if you want to be in person, you can, but also like understanding like that's not an option for everybody. So yeah.
Yep, that sounds pretty much what we're experiencing too at the library, and trying to host programming that is accessible for everyone in various ways how you can do it. And why Greg and I were so adamant we would keep these virtual book chats going as well, because one, it's easier to bring you in and you don't have to, you know, come down to a branch and give up all that time driving when gas prices are so high, and we can just talk and then you can go about your night and it'll be great. And then trying to do some more in-person stuff, which if people want to follow along, you can go to our website, mpl.org, and keep up with all the great virtual and in-person programming, and trying out some hybrid stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, and you can, what's great about it is you can include for people from more places than just Milwaukee, or, you know, include the rest of Southeast Wisconsin, which I think is, you know, we're not some island, right? So I think that's one good thing that's came out of COVID is this more connectedness in a way.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our questions, you already mentioned you were at Pride. Do you have any other fun plans for Pride Month or work related things?
So this Saturday, Oriental Theater will be screening Moonlight, and I'm so excited. Jack, who worked for Genre Queer at Milwaukee Film, like messaged me on Facebook and was like, we're bringing Moonlight, because like me and Jack would like geek out about Moonlight all the time. So I'm excited to have that on my Pride lineup. I saw Moonlight in theaters like 4 times. So to be able to return back to the place where it all started is going to be super, super dope and amazing. And then I'm also trying to have like a mostly low-key Pride Month now that like the Pride Fest activities are done. So I think I'm gonna try and do like a lot more like watching like queer films that I haven't seen before, or reading more like queer books. But yeah, I'm actually an old lady, so this month will be less about the partying and more about being like, yeah, what can I read or watch at 6 p.m. in my pajamas?
That's what I've been doing too at home. I'm doing like a friend of mine made like a book bingo called Reading the Rainbow 22 hashtags. I've been trying to like hit some of those, and she made this really great graphic for that. So been trying to read a bunch of things and novellas and short stories. And then yeah, one of our audience members mentioned that with your library card, we now have a subscription to Canopy with a K, and that's an amazing streaming platform, which has some really pretty decent queer films on there. So you get, I think it's 5 streams a month with your library card, and you can do that right from the comfort of your home, which is awesome. And that's a pretty new subscription for us, so we're really excited about it. And then again, we're going to be giving away some passes to that film, so maybe you can see Mikey while you're there. All right. Yeah. So you also work on films. Do you want to plug any of that work that you do?
I am, I'm like, where do I start? Okay, so Andrew Swant, local filmmaker, like fantastic person, got the 2019 Brico Forward Fund, which is like the annual filmmaker grant that Milwaukee Film does. And so after he got the grant, he was writing the story about this young Black boy from Sherman Park, and they were like, this is a fantastic idea, but you should like bring some Black writers onto your team. And so throughout 2020, throughout the pandemic, me and my partner, Madi Atif, worked on this feature film. And so that was really, I like always had an interest in, like, I had a couple screenplays like tucked away, but in, you know, clear Capricorn perfectionism, I was like, nobody can see these. These are not perfect. So it was a fantastic experience to work with this experienced filmmaker and like learn more about the industry through Andrew and also be supported in this way in something that was like completely like new and scary for me. And then to also be working on it with my partner was also fantastic because Madi is super talented and a brilliant, beautiful writer. And I would say that even if I wasn't his girlfriend. So it just was a nice thing to like work on together, especially because he grew up as a Black boy in Sherman Park. So it just made sense to like talk about this city in this way and like exploring like the different nuances of Milwaukee. So I'm very excited that I'm hoping that will be in theaters within the next couple of years. Once we get to like the nitty gritty filming part, the stressful fun part. And then I also was recently accepted into Focus Finder, another program run by Molly Vey at Milwaukee Film. So it's a 2-year accelerated program. And so I will be ending my time there with a short documentary about Dream Lab, my favorite coffee shop, hookah lounge, art studio space here in the city. It's in Walker's Point. Like literally I'm there pretty much every day. It's a really wonderful space. Sean, the owner, is a fantastic person who loves the city. And so I'm really excited to be able to like capture his story on film and highlight this place that I'm like, I'm here all the time anyway, like we might as well get filming. So very exciting things coming this year and next.
Excellent. So how can everyone keep apprised of what you've got going on? Where's the best places to follow you online, or do you have a newsletter?
I have my Instagram and there's a link in my bio in my Instagram that connects to my weekly newsletter. If you're subscribed to my newsletter and you're here, you don't need to mention that I haven't put one out in 2 weeks. But yeah, that's how most folks stay connected. Instagram is like my go-to.
Perfect. And don't worry, everyone, we'll include that link for all of that in our follow-up email in a couple of days after this, which is great. Any last thoughts or what's next on your hopes and dreams list or future projects?
Hopes and dreams. I hope to be the first Black woman to win the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. So trying to speak that into existence. Only one Black woman has been nominated in the history of the Academy Awards, and I think that was 1973. So trying to be the next one. And yeah, I think that's the main thing right now is like trying to do that, and also just trying to stay happy, healthy, and safe as the world goes on around us.
Absolutely. That sounds like a good plan. You heard it here first, everyone. Okay. All right. And then, yeah, as we go through our book recommendations, feel free to drop any questions you might have for Mikey into the Q&A. We're going to pivot over to what books we recommend. But before we do that, we do have a video of Mikey performing some of their poetry. So I just pulled some
pictures too.
Great pictures from your Instagram and from the internet. So I just wanted to share those.
So you put it up there. See, now it's out forever, right?
That's the internet for you.
All right. And then I'm going to mute so we can listen to you.
Things about myself and the world I didn't know I knew. 1. The first man I ever tried to save was my father. I realized this when he calls me drunk one night and is on the brink of crying. He talks about work. He talks about siblings I do not claim. I stay up later than I should, even though I have pre-algebra in the morning. There's no extra credit in trying to make 1,001 miles more tangible, less static, less cell tower. 2. For most of my childhood, I didn't understand why the white girls at recess didn't like me in their games. The Black girls didn't want shit to do with me either. 3. Tattoos are distractions from stretch marks. 4. The universe is always expanding. I don't know much about outer space other than the fact I think it is beautiful. My mother reminds me of outer space. 5. Growing up, I noticed that I am the darkest woman in my family, but I'm too afraid to say Black. I'm convinced no one notices, but I can tell by the way the girls in class look at me that I'm not fooling anybody 6. Nikila is the first reflection I have of myself. of women who wear my skin, of women with hair like mine a week before she died. She told me, I'll see you later. 7. I asked a boy to fall in love with me and he says no. 8. My father gets sober. I'm mad he doesn't call me from rehab. I'm mad that he is in rehab. I'm mad because his mom is the one who tells me, she says it casually at the dinner table as if to make the news easier to digest. 9. My mom and I don't spend as much time together as I would like. She is a hard worker and I didn't fall far from the tree. 10. Growing up middle class leaves me really confused on where I stand in the Black community. I can't tell if I'm a Black Bill Gates in the making or a bougie Tyler Perry character. 11. I watched a 10-year-old girl wilt when one of her classmates said, "You look just Black to me." Even at 20, I still struggle to believe that Black is okay, that it's more than enough sometimes. 12. I secretly loathe the word fucking when it's used as a verb, but I love it as an adjective. 13. List poems are my least favorite kinds of poems because they're too easy, too simple, too commonplace, like poems about the night sky or Black girls with daddy issues. 14. My father hadn't touched alcohol in years, but like a drunk man, honest and without much manner, he tells me I need to lose weight. 15. Who will tell this man I am not his daughter? 15. Who will tell this man that I am a descendant of beauty? 15. Who will tell this man that it's okay that I have expanded? 15. How does my father look at me and not realize that I am the fucking universe? Come on.
So powerful. I
You're
love that
great.
so much.
You're great. Yeah, I can see why you like the acting part as well, and how it's a perfect melding of the two. It's really great.
Thank you.
Ooh, goosebumps. All right. Well, now that we've made you listen to yourself, which I know, I am sorry. Let's jump over to our book recommendations. Mikey was so excited to give us, and I was like, we'll take all the ones you want to give us. So we're going to let you tell everybody why they should read these books.
Awesome. Okay. This is the part I've been waiting for. So I'm gonna work backwards. So When No One Is Watching is a brilliant thriller. It is a thriller that talks about gentrification in a Brooklyn neighborhood through the perspective of two people who live in the neighborhood. One is a Black woman named Sydney. Sydney always grew up in the neighborhood, like born and raised, like that was her place, and she's watching her neighborhood change. And Alyssa Cole, the author, really explores the question like, well, when people are booted out of their neighborhoods, where do they go? And it is, I ate this book up in like one day because it just was so like, once like stuff pops off, it pops off. And so I was completely like immersed in this world. And it was interesting watching this relationship blossom between Sydney and her neighbor across the street, who is a white man named Theo. So it's interesting because she's talking about gentrification, and it's just very interesting, kind of like an enemies to lovers kind of trope, which I'm a sucker for. And so it's just fantastic, and it's such an interesting way to talk about these like real world issues, and exploring something like gentrification through the lens of thriller / sci-fi / horror is like chef's kiss. Like I've never read anything like this. And I think if I'm correct, Alyssa Cole typically writes like historical romances. So it's a really interesting shift for her as well. But yeah, this was something that I walked in Target, saw it, and was like, well, guess I gotta buy it. So yeah, When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole.
I've met her in real life because I review romance for Library Journal, so I'm a huge romance reader, and that's how I know this author. She's awesome. Everyone should read everything she writes, period.
The next book is Halsey's I Would Leave Me If I Could. I love Halsey. I am going to her concert in 3 weeks. I've been trying to plan what I'm going to wear. I love Halsey. And so when I heard that she was putting a book out, and it was like her first collection of poetry, I knew if I loved her as a songwriter, and as like a visionary music artist, I can only imagine how that would translate over into a book. And so it's a really beautiful collection, a very honest and raw collection of poetry. She talks a lot about love and her body, her relationship with her family. And she talks a lot about living with bipolar disorder, which was very interesting for me, being someone who lives with depression, anxiety, and PMDD. And so to like read her experiences and like just I have a newfound appreciation for her as an artist through this. And also she is also the illustrator of the book. So there's one copy that has a beautiful photo of her with like a red fabric on her face. But this is my favorite cover just because it is so interesting and it goes around all the way to the back. So also there is a line that I love so much, I'm going to get bones tattooed on me. And that is, I want to walk away from my bones and set them down on the counter like my keys after work. And I was like, oh, that's such a really interesting image. So yeah, that's that. The lottery and other stories, let's talk about Shirley Jackson. Shirley Jackson as a writer of horror, of mystery and thriller, like Shirley Jackson is that girl. And so I was so excited. I actually was in Denver in this beautiful bookstore that they have out there when I saw this book on display. And it took me back to 8th grade. I had a fantastic instructor named Miss Horrigan, and we got the lottery put in front of us. And she was like, when we are going to read this in complete silence, no one speak. And so you have this group of 8th graders completely silent reading the story. And one by one, when you get to the ending of the lottery, you see everybody's heads pop up and everybody's making eye contact. And it just was one of those, like, I can feel myself in my chair next to the window. Like, I just remember where I was when I read the lottery. And so I knew I had to get my hands on more of Shirley Jackson's work. Truly like a pioneer for the genre. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, she's that girl. Like, so make sure that you read Shirley Jackson. And then speaking of people who are that girl, Carmen Maria, Her Body and Other Parties is my favorite book. Like, no book is going to top what Her Body and Other Parties did for me as a queer Black writer. I love Carmen. She is just a fantastic writer. I love her Instagram presence. Like, she is just so emboldened in like sexuality and like what it means to like live in like a fat body, and just like it's just so good. To give you a more words about this book, it just is a fantastic collection of, I don't even know how to describe it other than it is genre bending, because there are stories that are poetry and prose. There are some that are horror, some that are sci-fi, some that are thriller, some that are dystopian. And it's just amazing how she writes about queerness and womanness and just like the body in such beautiful, vivid ways. The first story is about the girl with the green ribbon, that old tale. So it's a complete revamp of it, and like it pulls in other like urban legends. And then the last story in the book is my absolute favorite. It's about this woman who is a survivor of sexual assault, and as a way to cope and like kind of re-embrace sexuality, she starts binge watching pornography, but then she realizes that she now has the ability to hear the thoughts of the actors, and it's just so good. And I'm like, who thinks of this? Like, what were you doing that you were like, yeah, that'll get them? Like, I just, her mind, like when we, like the meme where it's like her mind, that's me with all of Carmen's work. Like, literally so powerful, so amazing. I loaned this book out to like my favorite people because I was like, you need to read this, like, and then you need to buy it, and then you need to buy another copy to give to somebody else. Like, it's just like so good. Like, anything by Carmen Maria Machado, like, get your hands on. It's not an option. You have to do it.
Better listen, everyone. We have some enthusiastic support in the chat too, so just do it. And don't worry, we'll send you all of the links, so you can either get it from the library or you can go buy your own copies. All right. Thank
All
you
right,
so
Devin.
much.
I wish I was that passionate as you are about my books, but so I did two. I went really dark with my books this month. So the first one, The Powers of Darkness. I'm not going to try to pronounce Vladimir Asmussen. He's Icelandic, I believe. Okay, long story short, Bram Stoker, when he released the original Dracula, was a very heavily edited version, and one that he researched and he thought was true. So anyway, the editors in London were like, no, no, this was right after Jack the Ripper had torn through Whitechapel. They're like, no, you're not going to release about some dude that sucks people's blood and turns them into monsters. Like, you're not going to do it. Anyway, whether this is true or not, there was a missing, like, basically half of the book that never got put into the original version. I don't know if this is true, but this guy, Vladimir in Iceland, he wrote it in Icelandic or whatever they speak there. What do they speak there, Beth? Icelandic? It's not Dutch. I don't know.
Yes, Icelandic.
Yeah, Icelandic. Anyway, he wrote it. It didn't like this was back in, I don't know when it was translated to Icelandic, like late 1800s. It was pretty much not talked about because it didn't have an English version until, I don't know, like the 80s or something like that. So it's like he reworked the story, but it is like so much more dark than the original Bram Stoker Dracula we have, and a lot creepier, if you could get creepier. So anyway, enjoy it, take it or leave it, whether it was the original first part of the book, take it or leave it, or whether it was completely reworked. I guess we'll never know. The next one, Stuart Turton. I read 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which was a really great, like super great mystery. This one is like, imagine like the whodunit in like 1630 on a boat traveling through Europe. Of course there's a detective on board, but there's like really evil, awful stuff happening on this boat, and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen, and it really keeps you jumping through the entire thing. Really great character development. Of course, the 1600s. So there's like the wife of the captain is like part of this mystery, and she's totally breaking down all these barriers because like 1600s, right? So, but she's like solving the mystery with the lieutenant and the detective, who was also a prisoner at the time. But anyway, enjoy it. But it's really dark and really weird stuff happens. So enjoy.
Woohoo. Okay, fine turn. I wanted to also pick just a bunch of great reads that have women righting their own wrongs for themselves in their own way. So number one is a book I'm listening to actually right now on audio. It's called A Caribbean Heiress in Paris by Adriana Herrera. I am just adoring the narration so much. So if you can listen to this one, I really recommend it. The narrator is exquisite. It's about a woman named Luz Alana, who in 1889 sails to Paris from Santo Domingo to try and get her rum business off the ground. She's inherited this distillery from her father, but she is not being taken serious by any of the men in Paris in 1889. So she comes up with a marriage of convenience with this Scottish man who is trying to get his whiskey distillery up and off the ground, but he needs her empty rum casks to put his whiskey in. So it's kind of like a perfect partnership. And she has an ironclad prenup for him, and she is in charge of her business, and he is only there in name only to make sure she gets what is rightfully hers. And she's just a spitfire, and I love her and her friends. And I think there's going to be additional books in the series that all feature her friend group, the Leonas, the Lionesses, who are making their waves in 1889 Paris and Europe. So it's super great. My next pick is called The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School, and this is actually a young adult selection, but I've been following the author online for quite a while, and as a former Catholic school kid, this is something that's close to home for me. Just recovering from all of that still at my elder age. But this one is about a girl who was outed at her school before she was ready, and clearly it's an issue, and so she has to change schools, and she is determined to not fall in love and not do any of that business, just to keep her head down, graduate, make sure her little brother's okay, and carry on. But of course, the only openly queer girl at her new school is kind of perfect, and it makes some trouble, but in a good way. And it's just, the parts that I've read so far are just completely delightful and refreshing and honest. And the author unfortunately went through some really awful things online when the book came out, from people just being gross. So I'm trying to make everyone read it to support her, because it's a vital story for so many kids these days, and I just loved it. All right, and then I have to mention Siren Queen by Nevo, who we just hosted at the East Branch for the release of Siren Queen. This one is set in 1930s Depression era Hollywood, and it is a magical version of that historical time, and the magic is very present and not very explained, but it's just very unique in how the way she writes it. And they use magic to help become these siren queens. So this woman wants to be a movie star, a glamour queen, and the heads of these movie studios are actual monsters who make deals with you. You sell your soul, you give them parts of yourself to change the way you look and make yourself more beautiful. And it's really an allegory for the Me Too movement in Hollywood as we know it today, but they're actually monsters. And if we think about it, some of those folks are actually monsters without the magic. So it's just gorgeous prose, and I was just sunk into that time period and swept away, and I just recommend it for everyone. And it does have a really satisfying ending, so check that one out. And then By Her Own Design is one that is coming, I think it's coming out really soon. It's not quite out yet, but it's by an author I follow online as well. Her name's Piper Hughley, and she is highlighting, it's a historical fiction and about the untold story of Anne Lowe, who is a Black woman and granddaughter of slaves who rose above her own struggles to become a designer and to create one of America's most famous wedding dresses of all time for Jackie Kennedy. So the author is really working to bring her story to life, because I think most people just don't know about her, and that's a shame. And she had a really difficult life. She got married very young. Actually, I don't quite think she was 18 when she was forced to get married, and she rose above her situation to really make a name for herself. And the author just wants to bring her story back to life for everyone, because we all know Jackie Kennedy's dress, right? That's just something we know, and she designed it, and lots of other famous outfits that you might not have realized were from Anne Lowe. So definitely check that one out as well. And those are my books. And then, of course, all these amazing reads that we talked about tonight can qualify as part of your adult summer reading program, which you can sign up now. We don't want the kids to have all the fun, so we made sure to have a grown-up version of the summer reading program. And if you stop in and show that you've signed up either online, or you can sign up in person at any Milwaukee Public Library branch, we will give you a coupon for a free book, which you can pick off of our used book carts at the library, or you can go downtown to the Central Bookseller and pick out a free book with that coupon, which is super great. All you need to do is log 5 books throughout the summer by the end of August, and then we'll enter you into a drawing. And we've got amazing prizes from local businesses that will be raffling away to those, including Milwaukee Film Festival memberships, gift cards for various businesses like the Bronzeville Collective, all sorts of wonderful stuff. So highly recommend you all sign up, and we will drop the link in the chat and include it in our follow-up email. All right, and then without further ado, I did draw some random numbers. So I hope Brittany Walker and Sheena Carey, you have won sets of passes to go see Moonlight. Yay! If you registered with your email, we will just reach out to you via email probably tomorrow. I will let you know how you can get your hands on those. So thank you for being here. Yay!
And you're going too, right, Mikey?
Yeah, I will be sobbing in the front row into a large bag of popcorn. So
Excellent.
ready.
We want to thank Milwaukee Film for being our partner on this amazing film, which is part of their Pride Month series. So definitely go check out Moonlight, and there is other films that are coming. You can see that at mkefilm.org/pride. Thank you again, Milwaukee Film. Do I have any more slides? Oh, I don't have our next book chat guest secured, but I do want to make sure everyone knows we are hosting some amazing kickoff events for our summer reading programs for all ages. They start Wednesday, June 15th. You can stop by mine at East on Monday, June 20th at 6 o'clock. I'll be giving away a lot of free books, talking about book recommendations. We'll probably have some snacks, and we'll get you going with summer reading this summer. So I hope to see you there. All right. And then thanks as always to Slides Carnival, where I got the rainbows from. I don't like making my own slides.
Okay.
Yay. Let's see. I'm looking to see if we have any questions before we let you all carry on with your evening. Somebody said they'll be at Moonlight salting that popcorn with their tears as well. Let's see. Lots of thank yous. You're an amazing human, Mikey. Keep up the trailblazing work. Not really any questions though. So
It's a
any
pleasure
final,
to talk with you. Yeah.
any final thoughts for us?
Thank you. This has been fantastic. I've been looking forward to this for so long. So I just appreciate y'all, your awesome questions. And I'm so excited to dig into your suggested reads. Siren Queen and the one on Dracula are like top of my list now.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Mikey. We'll have to have you in person for something in the future. We'd love to have you back. You've been amazing. We're so thrilled you were able to talk with us tonight. For everyone listening, just watch for that email in a couple of days, and we'll get Mikey's interview up on YouTube as well. All right. And then, yeah, Brittany and Sheena, I will email you to make sure we can get you those passes before the movie. Yay.
Right. Bye, everyone. Thanks again.
Yeah, good night.
Bye.
Stay cool.